The vaccine is safe and suitable for everyone. Now, there are certain stipulations, of course. We're not doing people under 18, because that's the manufacturing. But as far as race, ethnicity, or sex, nothing, it's safe for everybody. Of course, people who are allergic to its components or people who have severe allergies will not be given the vaccine. When we look at the vaccine itself, where trials have been, and phase trials were done, they were done in Brazil, and they're not white. You know, it's done in South Africa, and all of them are not white. So it has been tested in many different ethnic people. So as far as I'm concerned, it is safe for anyone, except those categories that I told you just now, for us to use.
The Oxford Astra Zenaca vaccine does not contain blood products. The vaccine of itself looks at genetic material, which will form the basis of the immune response, but there are no blood products within the vaccine. The vaccine will be a novel vaccine. It has a new mechanism. So the vaccine will actually deliver some genetic material. The genetic material, once delivered inside the body, will stimulate the cells to produce the coronavirus spike protein. Now, not the coronavirus. So the basis of the immune response will be to the spike protein, and this was alluded to by previous speakers yesterday. So the vaccine will create just that one part of the virus which the body will use to make and mount the immune response. So there's no blood product involved in that. There's a little bit of genetic material delivered. The spike protein is produced and an immune response will result from that.
Vaccines are not using the actual COVID-19 virus. The AstraZeneca vaccine, as Dr. Connell explained, it takes a virus that cannot cause infection in a human and attaches a part of the COVID-19 particle to it. So it does not have the COVID-19 virus in it. So it cannot reactivate inside your body and give you COVID-19 and allow you to die from that.
In the screening prior to vaccination, you will be asked some basic questions about your general health. If you're feeling very ill at that time, that's never a good time to take any vaccine, whether it's COVID-19 or not.
So you don't have to not eat to get a vaccine. You don't have to eat to get a vaccine either. Once you're in good condition, once you're in good health generally, you can still get your vaccines. And we target those persons, the high-risk persons, those with the chronic diseases, the elderly. Those are the persons that we want to target in the initial stages.
And after you've had your vaccine, you will go to what I loosely say is the recovery area. So you will be sitting there and you have to stay at least 15 minutes. And we will observe you, and you will observe yourself, of course. And once everything is okay, you will be allowed to leave. But you're not going to just come in, get a stick, and go out. So that is the process. So you're not going to run off right away. So if you don't eat before you come, bring along something, especially for the elderly. Bring along a little something in your bag so that you can munch on it.
Once you have got your vaccination, you actually receive a card very similar to this one, which I got my vaccination today as we were testing the system. And also, there's a SHAPE app managed by students of the University of the West Indies. And after you receive your vaccination, they enter your information and they actually email you the same information. It also has your return date when you should come back in 4 weeks' time to receive your second dose.
So what we are saying at this point, you begin to see protection after the first dose of the vaccine is administered. That protection will start to become practical to the particular individual at least 3 weeks' time, and then it will increase. Then, for all these vaccines thus far, there is a second dose to be administered. So in the case of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, that second dose will be given between a variable period of 4 to 12 weeks. And your strongest response will be after the second dose has been administered, about 15 days after. But you still have a measure of protection 3 weeks after you receive the first dose.
So if you're taking medication, can you take the vaccine? The answer is yes. All of your chronic disease medications, your blood pressure medication. Remember we said in an earlier program, it's important that your blood pressure, your blood sugar, all your other chronic conditions are controlled, because it reduces the likelihood that you will have a severe outcome if you were to contract COVID-19. If you have, as some of the panelists have said, a history of a severe allergic reaction. Now, this has to be distinguished, because some people out there are saying, well, you know, I have allergies, I get hay fever, is this vaccine? Of course, you should take the vaccine. This is not a contraindication to vaccine. If you have a severe allergic reaction to vaccines, or if you're known to have severe allergic reactions, you should discuss with your healthcare worker whether your vaccine is adequate or appropriate for you. So continue your medication, and only those with severe allergies, which, by the way, does not include asthma. Severe allergies may present with reason, but if you are asthmatic, you should also take the vaccine.
Now, severe allergies, this can be a concern. So the first thing that will happen is a medical evaluation of this person will be undertaken. Okay? We first want to know if the severe allergy is to any component of the particular vaccine that we intend to use. Once we are certain that that is not the case, we can proceed with this individual, but we will do it in a clinical setting. This person will receive the vaccine, should they agree to have it, in a clinic, fully prepared, and we will monitor them throughout the entire process. Of course, we will always inform, and we'll give them opportunity to decide. But yes, the good thing about the vaccine that we're going to introduce here, we have had no incidences of these very severe allergic reactions, so that's a very good thing, and we will approach each situation of that nature on an individual basis.
If you have tested positive, if you have recovered from COVID-19, you still need to take the vaccine. There is no evidence that the immunity from having had this disease is protective enough to even stop you from getting it again, and also to stop you from getting very ill. So to be very clear, if you have recovered from COVID-19, so you're not actively ill, you should be vaccinated. There is a more robust immune response if you've had a vaccine than if you're just recovering from COVID-19. So even if you are recovered, you should still get the vaccine, because you want a really robust immune response to protect you for a longer period of time.
Because it's been shown that the majority of people who get the disease and progress then to have serious disease are those not only with chronic diseases, but the elderly. So we are going to be trying to vaccinate as many of the elderly as possible.
Oh, the older the individual, should they contract COVID, the more severe the course is likely to be. So the highest group currently at risk would be the elderly. You also have groups with comorbidities, with diabetes and these other things. They're also at risk. So yes, the elderly are predominantly at risk. Younger persons with comorbidities, whether it's diabetes, whether it is asthma and other conditions, they're also at risk of severe disease. So youth of itself should not really be the end all to it in that aspect. So the entire population should approach the COVID-19 disease with caution, because the clinical course can be unpredictable even in younger persons. Even if death does not occur, severe disease can still happen in younger age groups. Yes, the elderly will fare worse, but the younger age groups should also be cautious. And also there is a public health aspect to this as well. The younger persons, you have a family unit, and you need to help protect them as well. So taking the vaccine can also help protect your extended family as well.
Point is that there's an important clock that is ticking. One is the fact that this virus is in an environment and mutating. And the longer that this environment or the population takes to be immunized, the more variants will emerge. And the more likely that the variant that emerges will be resistant to a vaccine. And quite often, some people may sit back and say, well, I'm going to give it a year or 2 years and see what happens. Then I'll take the vaccine. You are not doing the population any good by delaying your immunization. You are just making it more susceptible to variants. It makes no sense if only 20 or 30% of the population takes up this vaccine, because the whole herd immunity concept is lost. And the point that I want to really drive home is you then will have another population mutating, the population of viruses of COVID-19, and therefore variants will evolve, because viruses are smart. They want to live just like us. The only way they can do so is to mutate and find more clever ways of invading or bypassing our immune system. So we can expect, if we do not get vaccinated within a timely fashion, and we don't know what that time is, then as a population, we are more at risk for these variants.
Let's look at the whole population of the country. The less people you have in it that are infectious or are able to pass the infection on to somebody else, the better. You agree with that? So, if you immunize and the people are not ill or they're not as ill, a person going around coughing, coughing, coughing and not using anything, spreading all the germs around, in a simple way, if they're not coughing as much and they're not spreading as much, they will be less infectious. So hopefully, all the people who come in contact with that person would not get infected.
To add to the comments already mentioned, so there are many considerations in a country choosing a particular vaccine. There is also a global rush to acquire vaccines. But we have an excellent choice here in the Oxford Astra Zenaca vaccine for Barbados, meaning that we have a vaccine that is thermodynamically stable for our climate. So the vaccine is stable up to 30 degrees Celsius. So we can deploy this in the field in our vaccination campaign. The vaccine has standard refrigeration requirements between +2 to +8 degrees Celsius. We are accustomed to this. All right, so our health system, our health sisters, they can handle this perfectly. All right, so when you consider a mass population vaccination rollout, you have to put a lot of things into context. Okay, so for an effective campaign, we would want to deliver as many vaccinations as possible. We would like to cover all of Barbados. Okay, so we need a tool that is effective, and that's what we are going to get. It is stable in our climate, so we can give this vaccine in our clinic. We can give this vaccine at an off-clinic site. We can do campaigns throughout the island quite comfortably with this vaccine, because it has already been mentioned. We are looking to achieve herd immunity. We want to get the vaccine out there to as much as Barbados, and we want to be able to offer it to all of Barbados, because it matters. If you achieve herd immunity, you can then move to decrease in country transmission of COVID-19. So you're looking at the benefit to the entire population, and this is the key thing to look at here. If we can handle this situation, and we will handle this situation, we get this vaccine out and we deploy it, we will begin to see the benefits of it. So we have chosen a vaccine, and it is an effective vaccine. The vaccine will give you protection up to 70% against symptomatic disease. It will give you protection 62% against severe disease, hospitalization, and death. So we already have an effective choice here, and we also have something that we can use in our environment and get it out to as many Barbadians as possible. So this is a critical aspect in covering the entire population. So the sooner that we can achieve herd immunity, the benefits to the entire population, the visitors and the residents of Barbados will be clear. And that is the goal. All right, you want to get to a point that you decrease transmission, so it's not living in fear constantly of this COVID-19. So we have a tool that will do that. We have a tool that we can use, we can get it out there, we can achieve herd immunity, you get a better result for Barbados. And that is what you want with a vaccine. Remember, it's population, it's individual as well, but we want it out there. There's a lot of literature, there's a lot of media coverage, there are a lot of questions. Remember that vaccines, they are safe, they have been created to prevent infectious diseases. Next to clean water and sanitation, vaccines are among one of the foremost public health measures that save lives. So at the end of the day, we're looking at a life-saving intervention here with the deployment of the COVID-19 vaccine in Barbados.
A lot of the media rush during a pandemic focuses on, well, we have a new vaccine and the FDA is trying to get it approved and the scientists are trying to get these things in place. Now, just to put things in perspective, historically, vaccines take a very long time because the old technology used took a long time. So for instance, the influenza vaccine, way before Linda, my time in medical school, but I guess you would have heard about it. They used egg white, and the virus had to be grown in that egg white, and it took forever. With these new platforms, is what we're going to refer to them as. This doesn't take us long because you're using sophisticated technology. I can say to you that viral vector and viral vehicles and mRNA, for instance, are more than a decade of technology, and it was really just trying to determine well, what new virus this technology would be used to counteract. What is the reason for this? Virologists, clinical pharmacologists, other scientists quite rightfully identified that we were likely to face pandemics, and we don't have the time to build up technology. So the technology had to be there, approved, and waiting for a pandemic. And here we have a pandemic, and therefore it was able then to be used quite quickly then to fine-tune for the COVID-19 virus.
There are working groups, as I told you before, at WHO, and one such working group is the Pandemic Influenza Preparedness Working Group, of which I happen to be a member. And in that group, we look at, of course, influenza, not COVID. But what happens is that we've been able to negotiate with countries to share any new viruses that come along. So that in the case of China, where this particular virus is supposed to have originated, it was shared as early as possible with WHO. We are also in relationships with the WHO laboratories, special laboratories that receive then these viral materials from the different countries. And after that, there is also a sharing from the laboratories with the manufacturers. So everything is a win-win situation where the group tries to get viruses quickly and early. They share it then with the laboratories that are qualified in the WHO system, and those laboratories also share them with the manufacturers of vaccines. And so that is one of the reasons why we were being so quick to be able to develop these vaccines for this new disease. In addition to what you already said, Dr. Connell, about the technology being much more advanced than it was years ago.
We have grown up in an era or a setting where we have not known childhood mortality in the way that perhaps the older generation knew, when children died of mumps and rubella and measles and polio and diphtheria and so forth. We have come up without knowing these diseases. But the reason we have not known these diseases is because of vaccines. And so this particular age group now has come up where in a setting where hesitancy or distrust or mistrust in vaccines is higher because they have not known eradication of diseases from vaccines. With this pandemic, we have had to fight not only against COVID-19, but also against the infodemic, which is a lot of fake news and false information has been put out there about what vaccines are and what they do and how they affect the population. And so as the medical fraternity of this nation, we want to speak out against that infodemic also, and we want to put the correct information, the scientific information out there. BAMP has a task force, a COVID-19 task force, and we have looked at the science every day, and we look at what is relevant and what is coming out and put out information. So we want to encourage the population to listen carefully. We have several updates on many different aspects of COVID-19, including vaccination. And we believe that the AstraZeneca vaccine is a good vaccine for our population at this time.
When the vaccine trials were first announced in terms of the results, the trials were designed in such a way that they were looking for the disease. So what they found was that persons who got the vaccine had less disease. So it had less severe disease, which is what you're talking about. However, within the last few days only, within the last week, the AstraZeneca study investigators have proven that not only is there less disease if you've taken the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, but there's less infection as well. Right? So that is one of the contributors to herd immunity. The vaccine will work in reducing transmission.
The vaccines available on the market, we have the big four for COVID-19 at this time. So you have your Pfizer vaccine, you have your Moderna vaccine. On the Russian side, you have the Sputnik Gamaleya vaccine, and you have the Oxford AstraZeneca. Now, all these vaccines are relatively safe. In particular, with the Oxford AstraZeneca, there's been a low incidence reported of severe allergic reactions, so that is a good thing. The effectiveness or the efficacy of these vaccines will vary, but all of these vaccines produce an efficacy above 60%. So what that translates to, persons receiving the complete course of vaccination will be offered a measure of protection against severe disease should they contract COVID and the subsequent complications of that. That also translates into the medical sense in the form of reduced hospitalizations. So this is what you want: an effective vaccine. You have decreased symptoms, you have decreased severe medical course, and the patient is more likely to survive. So this is what we want at the end of the day for the vaccine to save lives.
All of the coronavirus vaccines to date, all of them to date, have proven that they're efficacious in reducing severe illness and reducing death and hospitalizations. The AstraZeneca vaccine has shown some early evidence that it might also reduce transmission. This is important because many questions that have come in from the public have been, well, does this vaccine stop me from getting infected with COVID-19? There is no evidence for this. Does this vaccine prevent me from transmitting the virus to someone else? Again, There is no evidence of this either, except for early evidence from the AstraZeneca vaccine. All that the vaccine is therefore doing is preventing you from getting a serious illness, which although you might say, well, the bar is low there, if you are going to get an infection, you'd rather get the infection but not get seriously ill from it. And just as a side point, most of the vaccines that we have currently available to us do not prevent you from getting the actual illness. They just prevent you from getting very sick from the illness. So the AstraZeneca vaccine is an opportunity for a population that is vaccinated to, one, reduce the likelihood that they will become very ill or die from the vaccine, which is the most important thing right now. And secondly, it appears that it may also decrease the transmission. I've seen the news report. I haven't seen the data specifically, but from the news report, just to recap, the South African government has halted the vaccination of the AstraZeneca vaccine because obviously the variant in South Africa is a South African variant and the vaccine hasn't been shown to be as effective against it or not effective. Now, without seeing the data, I would say that makes sense. If you have a variant in your country that is not covered by the vaccine that is in your country, then it makes sense to use another vaccine which might cover that variant. However, you have to kind of counterbalance that with the idea and situated in Barbados that, okay, so we don't have the South African variant here, as you correctly said, we haven't tested, so we don't know. But we do have a population without any or with very little immunity. And using this fact, we then know that this population is not only at risk of developing severe illness and all the complications of COVID-19 and being infected, but the population also has the risk of helping to create more variants. So at a population level, we have even more responsibility to immunize with a vaccine that is effective in our setting. And therefore, it doesn't negate the South African study, whatever the data is showing there, but it also says that countries, this is a country-specific response as well, but it is also a global response. And if other countries likewise say, well, we're not going to use AstraZeneca, although the dominant strain in that particular country is not the South African virus, then that doesn't make any sense because what will happen is that more variants will emerge, which will of course then be resistant as well. So direct response to your question, it does not negate the fact that the AstraZeneca vaccine should be used in other territories where there's been thought to be some response still possible.